Welcome everyone to today's social system mapping sense-making session for June 3rd, 2024. Your hosts today are me and Kara, and Amy Moritz is going to be our model presenter today. And I mean, she's the main presenter, really. And so just what this is a vision about a possibility. This whole community of practice is a vision about a possibility. It's a learning opportunity. It's an opportunity to contribute your own experience and insight, and it's a community of practice. And for today, what we hope is that you will come away with a sense of the potential that we're inspired by, that you'll meet some cool people and feel welcomed by them, that you come away at least a little bit curious about how social system mapping can support a network in learning how to deal with complexity, and you'll see how we can explore useful frameworks to understand their underlying fundamentals. So for our agenda, we're going to do introductions in a moment, overview of social system mapping basics, then we're going to split up into breakout groups and introduce ourselves a little more fully there. And then I will talk briefly about the social system mapping transformation process. And then Amy will will present the human systems dynamics 4 truths model, and then we'll do breakouts again, and then we'll come back together. Hello, Curtis, in your car. So for starters, let's see, do we have I did not grab the voting link. Kara, can you put the voting link in the chat for the Mentimeter? And yep, you did. Okay. So I invite everyone who's able to click on the link that's in the chat and go into the page there and enter your name, pronouns, location, network, and networks that you're supporting in some way, all together in one field. If able, if willing, if it's not convenient or you don't feel like it sharing that much, don't feel like you have to. And then for those of you who, I think most of you know how to deal with Mentimeter. Larry, are you able to get the link? Are you good?
Yes.
Okay, great. And Curtis, none of this, you don't get to do any of this since you're driving. Okay. So, and then once you're done with that, if you could toggle back to the screen that I'm sharing, and we can all take a moment to check and see who else is present, what they're working on, where they are. And I see Drew has put his in the chat, which is just fine. And Drew, if you're wanting to see other people's, then you can see them on my screen, because other people are putting them into the Mentimeter link. And we're honored to have Drew joining us today. He's a very experienced mapper who does a lot of this kind of work. Okay, and then so Molly, you're in Ohio. I'm trying to think, it feels like there's somebody else in our network who's in Ohio, but not coming to mind. So okay, so as you can see, we have people all over both the United States and other parts of the world. Larry from Evanston. That's Ohio, right? I think.
All right. Evanston, Illinois.
Oh, Illinois. Okay. I knew that.
There are several Evanstons, yes. But normally I'm in Taipei. I'm visiting for a couple of weeks. So
Great. Okay, thanks. Thanks for sharing that information. And then can you just share with us what is the possibility that you envision in the network that you're engaged in or working on that you just referenced? For some of you, there might be a lot, but let's just pick one and talk about a high level possibility that you're excited about.
Christine, are you asking this question to the community, to everybody?
I'm asking you to answer it in the Mentimeter.
Got it.
Yeah. Are you able to access it? No?
Thank you. Yes, I was just, I think, internally distracted for a moment, so I wanted to know where to put my response. Okay.
Molly, I saw you shake your head. Was that no, I can't get to it. You're muted. Molly, are you having trouble with your sound? You're good. Are you okay now? Put it in the chat if you're having other kind of technical challenges. If you're able. So shared learning across some key differences in a community, the differences being scholars and practitioners, collaboration to support neighborhoods and towns to flourish, increasing voter participation, people seeing themselves as part of a bigger picture and purpose. I can't find the Zoom window now. Do you do you know how to do a Alt tab if you're in Windows? Are you in Windows? Or you're in Zoom? Jim, can you tell her how to toggle between windows in a Mac?
Sorry, I wasn't following it.
Okay. She
I have
can't find
multiple screens, so I don't do that toggling.
Pardon me. Who knows Macs? Amy, Kara, you know a Mac. Do you know how to toggle between screens?
I just put it into the chat, but it's Command and Tab at the same time.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I got it. Sorry, I couldn't see the chat, so that was my problem there. But
Okay.
now I'm back. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to move ahead because I'm really excited about some of what Amy is going to do. So I'm really wanting to get to that. So for those of you who, well, just what is social system mapping? Social system mapping is essentially, it's a mashup or a synthesis of several different kinds of maps, of system maps, stakeholder maps, asset maps, social network analysis maps, and concept maps. So it's kind of got some of all of those in it. It's a process more than a product. We say the social system mapping starts as soon as you decide to make a map. The process is online, interactive, accessible, iterative, emergent, dynamic, and it's an ongoing collective practice. So one of the things we're doing in these sense-making sessions is working to help share ways of making sense with the social system map that we can do together. So the reason for social system mapping is to support a global movement to shift from systems of dominance, exploitation, and extraction to systems of connection, reverence, and regeneration. And what we've learned over the last 20 years or so of this kind of work is that that kind of transformation requires strong networks. It's not a project or an organization. It requires networks of projects and organizations and people and different perspectives. And those networks also need to include wise change agents. So we can create strong networks with strong relationships, but if they're not systemically savvy, we might just be creating really profound echo chambers that don't have the capacity to make the changes that we're looking for. So in this supporting systems change, through networks, we're working on, there are two fundamental shifts that I like to talk about in this work. One is of which is the relational shift, where we're going from sort of hard boundary separate selves to more porous, more aware of others, more interconnected and interdependent selves. Then the other shift that we're working on is a cognitive shift, where we're going from having a mechanistic sense of how change happens and how the world works to a much more open, much more interdependent, much more system, living complex systems thinking worldview. So this is really two different perspectives on the same thing, and they work together. So this is sort of the relational perspective, this orange thing here, we're looking at it this way, but we're also wanting to increase our capacity to look at it from this other angle of the systemic complexity perspective. And social system mapping combines both of those. So we've got what in our little color coding, purple is the cognitive and orange is the relational, and social system mapping mushes them all up together so that you can look at them from lots of angles. So that's what social system mapping is. We're going to put you into breakouts of rooms of 3. Kara, I'm assuming you're not including me and Amy in those. And we'll give you 5 minutes to connect and introduce yourselves in your network situation and challenge with each other. And then we'll come back and go further. Oh, and that's in the transcript. No.
I'm not sure. I paused the recording, so I don't know how that associates with the transcript.
It's okay. It's not a secret. Welcome back. I think we've got one room came back all early and the others they're still wrapping up. So we'll.
Oh, I thought it was going to automatically do it, but anyway.
It does it well. It pops this button right up or something, and then you feel like compelled to click that button.
I talked the whole time. I was the only one who talked.
Good for
So
you.
I talked for quite a long time.
But that was okay. Christian and I had been in a group together before, so.
That's why I
But
said
Molly didn't learn anything about us, but that's okay.
you will be put in the same groups again.
All right.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah. You can balance that out. Yeah. But I'm glad you got to talk, Molly, because yes, you haven't been around and you haven't got everybody. So. Okay. And what was I just going to do? Okay. Oh, and I'm still screen sharing. I didn't mean to. Oh, there's a new screen sharing pause button in Zoom. For those of you who screen share in Zoom, can now pause it. Can you see my screen now? Are you?
Mhm.
You can see my screen? Then it's not stopping. Then it's not pausing it. Okay, there. Okay, now I can see everybody's back. Welcome back. I hope you had a good introductions to each other and a little good catch up. And I'm just trying to move. Okay, so going back to sharing my screen. Okay, so one of the questions that we get that comes up all the time is how is it that social system mapping can support what's our theory of transformation basically is why do we think that social system mapping can support this evolution and development of deeper insight into complexity as well as more and stronger relationships. So here's a high level sort of process overview of sort of like how the evolution works in our theory of transformation, which is that in the beginning, there's a bunch of people on, just doing their stuff. They're working on something that they're concerned about. They start to become aware of other people. So let's use the example of Richard's of voter registration, wanting to increase voter registration in a specific location. So Richard's working on that. He's talking to people. He's starting to discover other people who are interested in increasing voter registration. They start to realize that if they all worked together, they would have more impact, and they start to want to have the work that they're doing ripple out further into the world. So they want to leverage what they're doing and they want to collaborate. At some point, some group of some subset of this group or some person in this population decides that they want to take on some responsibility for helping to generate that connectedness and that collaboration and network. That person or that small group of people will start to meet and think about how they can do that. They'll start to build relationships amongst themselves. That's this little orange swatch here. They will start to do convenings with people on the ground, bring people together around specific topics or ideas, introduce people. Somewhere in there, they will start to realize that they need to understand more about the people on the ground, the people doing the work. They need to understand what skills they bring to the table, what resources they have to contribute to the project. They need to understand who's already working together, who knows each other and could be collaborating but aren't, who represents which different network or system perspectives, etc. So they start to have this idea of a social system map in their head, of the information they want in it. They're not calling it a social system map. They might not even be thinking it's, have a sense of what that might be. They just know they want this information, and somewhere as they grapple with their need for more data, more information about the network, they come across social system mapping and they decide to make a social system map. At that point, generally it's this core people. They might invite some others in, but they will start a survey. They will create a survey for creating a social system map. The survey, the data will come from the people in the network. It will go up to the social system map, and then everyone in the network will have access to that map. Often in the beginning, it's just the network guardians or core supporters who are using the data, who are looking at it to help them decide, what kind of topics to convene around, to help figure out how to make strategic connections amongst people across, with different skill sets or different perspectives around issues. But so at first it will be these people using the data, although everyone can access it. And then over time, these people will start to get feedback, and the people on the ground will start to say, hey, you should have asked this, you should have asked that. I think it would be great if we could look at it this way or look at it that way. And so the data begins to conform more and more to the purpose of the network. More people are using it for introductions and for helping to decide, reaching out. And the more people use the map, the more they give feedback on the map, and the more they do sense making with the map, the more they see other ways they could be using it. And they start to, they continue to have ideas about how to tweak the survey, tweak the questions, etc., and make it more in alignment with the purposes of the network. So the data is getting still closer to the purpose, and we're starting to do this little purple swath is sense making. We're starting to throughout the network do more looking at the map and sense making with the map and learning from the map. And as that increases, the data gets more and more aligned with the purpose of the network, the people. And so all of these things are sort of the relational piece, the cognitive piece, and the data piece are all just increasingly getting more and more aligned until they're just, all sort of working in the same direction and create sort of this big swirl of energy that pulls energy in, pulls interest in, and drives the network forward. So that's our theory of transformation. And that's, I'm going to just say that today, on one more last piece. Today, what we're working on in these Mondays, in these first Monday SenseMaking sessions, is we're really working on this cognitive shift. I think most people, when they start a social system map, they're pretty clear about the relational shift. They're pretty clear that we need to be introducing people and helping people collaborate more and spreading the word more. The relational piece, I think, is the one that is easiest for us to sink into and understand and start to get value from a map from. This systems thinking, complexity, cognitive shift is another level, and it needs more, a little more support and exposure. So that's what we're working on in this session every month. The cognitive shift, observing, noticing, discovering what's meaningful, functioning, missing, possible, and sense-making being an act of bringing to our conscious mind things that are not noticed before, things that you, in the context of a social system map, it's helping us bring to our conscious mind things that we can't see without a social system map, because you can't see people's relationships. You can get a sense of them when they're all together in the same room, but that's just a tiny, tiny tip of the iceberg of what's there. And this whole sense making then invites a next wise step toward deeper learning and more evolution of the network. So that's our theory of change. I'm going to stop sharing, and I think it's time for me to hand it over to Amy. And let me just get out of the presentation thing so I'm not messing with her presenting, and I'll invite Amy to take over. Thanks.
Thanks, Christine. And the other thing I would say, maybe you said this, Christine, about sense making, is I am coming more and more to appreciate that you have to practice sense making, and it is a practice, and a practice that's best done together with other people. And in this case today, I am practicing again, and appreciate your patience and appreciate the opportunity to practice with you guys. I'm also gonna obviously, or as usual, invite Christine to chime in as well if there's anything to add or share about what I'm going to bring to you today, which is a model from human system dynamics called 4 Truths. And this model is really helpful in working with differences that you might have showing up in your network or your system, or even within a group. And one of the things that I'll remind you is that it's within difference that actually holds a lot of potential and a lot of energy for change. And so the 4 Truths method is going to help us illuminate a particular kind of difference. It's going to help us see the different perspectives that might be at work. And the hope or believe or trust is that if we can sort of see, bring this to our seeing, our noticing, our conscious mind, these different truths at work, that's going to point us to our next wise action. So you can probably bring to your own mind being in a group setting or working with a group, or even the network that you're part of, where you've got these competing claims at truth. What's true, what's false, what's right, what's wrong. And the 4 Truths model is a tool to help us navigate sort of the tension and the turbulence of these competing claims that are coming at each other. And it's often when we're sort of in the midst of this, where these competing truths are at work, that we can find ourselves stuck. And the idea is that we want to get unstuck, and we want to be able to move towards something that's actionable. So these are just 3 of the 4 truths, and I want to take a little time to introduce these first 3 to you before we talk about the 4th truth. So subjective, normative, and objective truths. And I've got a slide for each one where I'll elaborate a little bit more. So with objective truth, sometimes this is the truth. That's what's quote marks if y'all didn't see my little hands going up. Objective truth is going to be dealing with data, evidence, things that we can validate or coming from sources that we all deem reliable. And when we're talking about objective truth with our network or our group, it is the objective truth that we all can agree on. So when there is a sort of data-based truth that we all agree on, that is our objective truth. Because sometimes what might appear to one as an objective truth can actually be a subjective truth if we're not all agreeing on the same data and seeing and validating the same evidence. And so a super quick example is I bike ride with my husband regularly. And on a most recent bike ride, I was getting a little anxious about today and presenting this to you all. And so I said, hey, honey, can I practice on you while we ride our bike? And so as we're going home on the green line, which runs up against an interstate, I said to my husband, for example, an objective truth is that the cars to our right are going very fast. And there was an objective truth in that for my husband and I, that we both could agree that there were cars to our right, but the very fast could be a subjective truth. So just a small little example of how objective truth can sometimes be subjective if we're not all seeing it from the same perspective. Let's talk about normative truth. So normative truth is sometimes referred to as our truth. It's the truth that's shared among a group or a segment of the population. Could be a truth that's shared within your family structure that's maybe different than a normative truth or way of being that's in a different family structure. So you may have had an experience of 2 families coming together, maybe in my case, my husband's family and my family. And as you might hold different normative truths about how you operate as a family culture, or maybe different truths that you hold even from being of different faith backgrounds that our 2 families brought together. So religion can be sometimes a basis for normative truth. We might have truths about how we think about money. We might have truths about culture and practices that we do, like what's the proper way to set the dining room table for a dinner. So different types of normative truth that can all be true, but they can also start to compete if you don't have some way to figure out how you're going to work together. Normative truths also can get sort of codified in things like Bill of Rights, or in my particular denomination, there's this whole book of some of the things that we hold to be true that have gotten sort of put down in writing. So normative truths, these are truths that are held by a group, a collective, some segment of a population. And then this third one, subjective truth. This is my truth. This is your individual truth. Often emotions are at play. This picture up at the top right is kind of supposed to represent falling in love. We all have our own truth about what that's like. It's a very subjective truth. The truth of watching a child learn to walk and sort of what you bring to that just from your own individual perspective and stories and experience. The photo on the bottom right, maybe represents how we bring our different values to our subjective truth. Do you see that as a beautiful work of art? Or do you see that as something different as you come upon that within your city? So subjective truth is very personal, and it very much lives very deep within us and often comes from our own experiences. And so the fourth truth is complex truth. And the idea between complex truth is that all of these different types of truths are all true. All of these can be true. All of them are true. And they often all are working within us as individuals, and certainly within our networks, in the groups that we're facilitating. They can be layered. They can be, I also love this image of them being braided together, so you can't sometimes even recognize them. And that's our invitation with the Four Truths model, is to just begin to even notice them, unbraid them, help our groups unbraid them. And so that as we can see them, it frees us up to have some choice about what we're going to do. And the idea is not that we're going to debate which is the best truth, like what is really true. We're not trying to find out what is the eternal, perpetual truth. What we want to do is examine them, unbraid them, so that we can make a choice about what's the most useful one to work with at this particular time. What's going to help us move forward? In human systems dynamics, they use the phrase fit for function. So what's going to help us as a group move forward right now? So I want to move into, and I will also say we are going to have time for interaction group-wise. We're going to go in a small group in a little bit, and we're also going to have time for just some reflection, and we can dig deeper. But I thought maybe we could start just doing some interactive with the Mentimeter link that you had earlier in the chat. And Kara, if maybe for convenience, if people have closed it, you could pop that in again. And I want to just lead us through a little bit of reflecting and sharing about these different types of truths. So your first invitation is to go to the Mentimeter link. I want you to think about your network. And I want to see if you could give us an example of an objective truth that's at work in your network. Great, thank y'all for these examples. Keep adding them if you want to. So objective truth, as y'all recall, often is data driven, or there's something that the group or your network agrees is evidence
Amy,
to that fact. Yes.
I'm struggling for a little bit here.
Yeah, go, please.
The way I understand objective truth is there's essentially no room for subjectivity in it. That it is like you know, the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, like things that are absolutely unarguable, which is fewer and fewer things these days, since now we have flat earthers, etc. But that if it's an opinion or if it's arguable at all, not in any particular group, but that objective truth is objective truth. Like rain comes down from the sky, there are oceans, the cars are to the left or to the right. But that it's stuff that there is no argument about. That's objective. And so I feel like the distinction between objective and normative sort of ooched a little further, normative ooched into objective. And it's confused. Yeah.
It's tricky, Christine.
Pardon me?
I think that's tricky with objective, you know, like as a researcher, it's layers. If you peel that onion about objective truth, if we can agree on data, but posing a research question comes from a paradigm. Who gets to ask the question? It's informed by culture. So if you want to undo that, if you want to start peeling that onion, I think objective truth, we may have to agree on data. You know, that it draws on data. The interpretation of the data again is influenced by cultural paradigm and you know, is it Western perspective? Is it indigenous perspective? It gets very messy.
Right. I agree with that. But I think the point of understanding that there's an objective truth is to recognize that we're always trying to dig down, like that we're often interpreting data or interpreting what we're seeing or even shaping what we're seeing through our either subjective or normative truths, and that objective really is not. I mean, if we get physical, I mean, I agree with that, but I think what we're trying to.
But I think that you were making a claim that data is objective. Data is interpreted, right? No? Okay.
No,
okay.
I am absolutely not making that claim whatsoever.
Okay. Then I think we should just agree on it being data driven.
No, Christiane, I think one of the, as we think about this model, the reason to bring objective truth, particularly when you're thinking about working in a group context, is there a data-driven truth that this network or this group can agree on, and it becomes an objective truth for them?
No, then it's still a normative truth.
Mm-hmm.
And then it becomes right. But isn't it that we need to agree that it's data?
Right, but this slide is, I think, an objective truth in your network is the definition of a normative truth. That's what that's the point I'm trying to make.
Got it. Yeah.
In my network, if we're qualifying it as in my network, then we're saying it's not necessarily true.
Yeah.
Physics or in. You know, and there's a lot of things we can say are true, like that capitalism has certain kinds of impacts that are provable, but it's stuff that is provable and system, you know, that we've yeah. So Christiane, I appreciate what you're saying, and there are layers, and I would say this is not objective. This is normative and distinct in the key here. The really important key here is being able to recognize when we're applying normative truth as if it's objective. That's what's dangerous. And so I'm just saying, I want to make that really clear is none of these are objective truths.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
And thank you, Christine. Go ahead.
And thank you, Amy, for jumping in and taking this risk and being open to me stepping in.
Absolutely. All right, y'all. Well, so let's see how we do on the next one. What is an example of a subjective truth that you hold about your network, or maybe that others, you know, a subjective truth that you recognized in others, or it's come forth?
Hmm. Amy, I just want to add,
Yes.
wait, where did we go to? I thought normative was next.
I did subjective next. Yeah, we haven't done normative yet.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, never mind. I was reading that as normative. Excuse me.
So yes, thank you. Yes, subjective truth is these are all true. These are all subjective truths. Would you agree, Christine? It's hard to not to argue with those.
Yeah.
So let's move to the normative. What's an example of a normative truth that your network holds? So I would say yes to all of these. So the truths that, yes, that are normative for your network. Christine, anything you want to add here or notice?
I'm just noticing how much we like, even just trying to define the differences. So also, for instance, Larry added objective truth is provable. It may also actually be normative, since the facts may be objective only to your mindset. And it might be that it's only provable because of this. I'm adding this that provable, it still requires you to ask the right question, depends on the questions that you ask and the way that you gather the data. So objective is a really, really, really tricky kind of truth. And I'm just like, I'm just sort of seeing the bleeding from one to the other, which is how life really is. And how hard it is to define them. Yeah, I'm just noticing that it's really challenging.
Yeah. And
'Cause-
I would say one of the things that I would add as I was leaning into this model is what was helpful for me is that we are using this framework so that we can move forward.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know that it was, for me, it was so important to get it absolutely right, but to get it good enough so that we can come to some sort of way to move forward together.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think that's a really, I mean, so we're sort of falling into that right now of what is right, what is the truth about the definition of the truths.
Mhm.
And so you're calling that out, and that's really valuable. And I think that we need, though, if we're going to use it, we need to have enough distinguishing between them so that we can really notice when what we're probably doing is bringing our own normative truth and calling it objective, because that's a really challenging place. Like Western science thinks it knows everything about everything, and maybe it doesn't. And so saying what attributing objective truth, we attribute objective truth to a lot more than I think we actually literally can.
Mhm.
I just want, I just want to add that the objective truth in science has been dismantled. That there is no objective, the general, I mean, the new science coming from quantum theory basically
Yeah.
debunks all of that. And so it's called positivist to even actually claim that there is an objective truth. And so I think that the model that I have thought come out of human system dynamics is more first person, second person, third person. And the first person being your lived experience, the second person being the
Christian,
understanding that there are other perspectives, and then the third person being drawn on data, but not saying that data is objective.
yeah. So I would like us to move forward at this point.
Bill, I have two more questions I want to set us up with before we go into our small groups. So I was asking you to think about your network. And so now I'd like to ask, what objective, what subjective, what normative truth, kind of name some of those. And so I'm curious to have you state one of your current challenges in your network. Is there a current challenge that comes to mind, particularly as you think about the truths that you were putting down? It could be the possibility, that Christine asked about in the beginning, could be the same thing. If you want to type in a current challenge in your network. All great challenges. Hopefully you guys are also, you came back to the Zoom after you typed yours in so you could read some of these. the next final question is, now what complex truth, with that challenge in mind, what complex truth would be helpful or insightful to help you address that challenge? So the complex truth says that all the objective, the subjective, the normative are all true. And then what complex truth, what aspect of that would be helpful to help us move forward? Christine, anything more you want to say about this before I do a little transition to small groups? Let's go. I want to do a quick little.
Amy,
Were you still thinking?
No,
Yeah.
I had muted my microphone as opposed to my Zoom thing, and I was talking, but yeah, I just said, no, this is great. I'm ready to move forward. I apologize.
Okay. All right. So I'm doing just a quick little reminder of last time we were together. If you weren't with us, that's okay. I think this was last time. I just asked you these questions, and I just wanted to also point out the pattern. I didn't create these questions. A colleague of all of ours named Lisa did, but we just did an adaptive action with these questions to try to process our understanding of four truths. So we have the what. I was asking you for what's an example of objective, of normative, of subjective, and then so what is one of your challenges, and now what complex truth would be most helpful. And so we're often bringing these models together. And in this case, we are we're using adaptive action to reflect on what we've learned. And I now want to invite you into small groups. And Kara, I would say till 11:15, that's not quite 15 minutes, same small groups. And my invitation is to use these questions, and I'm going to put them into the chat for you. But if you find in your small group, y'all want to finish your introductions or pick up on a particular aspect or a particular challenge that you're having, please use the time together as you want. But one suggestion is that you discuss what is it that you're understanding about the four truths? What questions are you having about them? So what are some ways that you might find the four truths useful in your work, in your to your network? And now what's one thing that you want to do with the four truths? I'm going to stop sharing. Kara, before you send us away, let me just post those questions in the chat if people want to have those as reference.
They don't actually, the chat doesn't carry into the breakout rooms. Just for future reference. Go ahead.
The chat should carry to the breakout rooms. It doesn't carry from the breakout rooms.
I have a different objective, subjective truth.
We'll see what happens.
We'll see what's normative, yes.
Kara, you can send us away, please. Are we all back, Kara?
Larry said he had to jump.
Okay.
Bye, Larry.
I want to show you one more slide that I prepared, and then we'll open it up for some conversation. So I found this interesting. So as I was doing my learning in preparation for this today, Glenda Oyoung, who is the founder of Human System Dynamics, shared these things in this webinar that I was watching. That if you want to strengthen objective truth, you're going to want to collect data, report data, analyze data. So you're going to lean into the data if that's what you're trying to do. If you want to strengthen normative truth, you want a dialogue. You want to encourage and invite dialogue and find out what, how can we find out what we have in common? And if you want to strengthen subjective truth, you want to ask for stories and personal narratives. And what I found interesting in listening to Glenda in this webinar, who I think is largely talking to people who are facilitators, so that when you have a group, just, being aware and mindful of the different truths that are at work with the group and where you might help them lean into one or the other types in order to get out of that unstuck place. So as a facilitator, you might recognize we need to invite storytelling and have people recognize each other's subjective truths. So that was just another offering I have for you. But I'd be curious to take maybe as much as the next 5 minutes to just go ahead, Christine.
Can I, as we're talking and I'm thinking about this distinction between objective and subjective and normative truths, there's a story that came to me that I'd like to share. It's really brief, but how data helps. And it's not, so if we go to the level of quantum physics, this won't make much sense. This won't be a relevant thing, but there was one of our mappers was working with a group that came to realize that to solve the system problem they were trying to solve, they needed to be far more racially diverse than the network was. And the core of the network thought that they were diverse. They thought, yeah, we've got plenty of diversity, we're diverse. But when they did a map, they could see that there were very few people of color in the network. They were very peripheral. They were not well connected to each other, and they were not well connected to the core. And so that is a place where you can say, okay, it's maybe not literally objective truth that the network wasn't very diverse, but it was useful. It was a useful piece of actual objective reflection back that the subjective truth that I've seen a few people of color, or the normative truth that, sometimes we connect with a person of color or two for input, is actually not, that those are subjective truth, normative truth. But objectively speaking, if you ask everybody about their connections, their relationships, you could say, yeah, we're not diverse enough and we need to work on on that piece. So I think that's a place where data, even though the data wasn't adequate, the data is always just anything is only as good as your data. Nonetheless, you can look at data and see where there are gaps in your normative truth, between your normative truth and your objective truth. So I just, that example. And the point there is not, is it literally objective? The point there is it useful to know that? Yeah.
Yeah. Super helpful. Thank you. Thanks, Christine. I'm actually picturing a talk, an on-ramp we've had where that came up, and which may be also what you're thinking of. So yeah. So I'm going to ask us to just be silent for just about 20 seconds for those of us that are introvert and need a minute to find our voice. And then I want to invite reflections. What's coming up for you? What have you learned? What are you taking away? 20 seconds, and then I'll invite that. So who's got something that they'd like to share? What's been resonating with you this morning?
You see Richard unmuted.
I just,
Richard?
I like that last slide, Amy, how to strengthen. I think that's that's a really interesting way of thinking through that. And I do appreciate that. Very much.
Thanks, Richard.
Payments, reflecting back on what you started with. I mean, it's, we talk about this theoretically and hypothetically, but like, it's just practice. It's, I find myself worrying, is this the right thing to use going forward or whatever? And trying to predict how people are going to respond. And I just think it's back to do your best, pick a practice, go and learn and go from there. That's,
Anybody else?
Christiane has her hand up.
Oh, Christiane, I'm sorry. Yes, I see.
I'm grappling with a question, and it kind of is related to the four truths. And because I think unearthing the truths is in itself, there's so much value to having that out in the open. I think it itself enables communication. But in terms of related to social systems mapping, I'm wondering about the size of a community. There is research on the size of systems. In other words, there's always a boundary. And is there an optimal size in order to even have have conversations that end up being productive? That I'm really grappling with because I'm very, like, when I try to think of a problem, I go, is this too big to be mapped? Is this too, those kinds of things.
It's one of the things that came up. Oh, go ahead, Jim.
In the same way that Christine was saying, you can use the map to reveal objective truths. Depending upon the questions, you can use it to reveal subjective truths, people's attitudes about things, their intentions, their interests and stuff. And so that's a way to actually use the map to help with that perspective of saying, because we tend to bring our subjective truth forward as objective a lot of times. But if you can see a bunch of subjective truths all out there on the map, I think that gives you some insight about these three different levels, using the map to do that.
Jim, does an example come to mind of seeing the subjective truths, bunch of them on a map?
Yeah, I mean, any of the questions, the questions about relationship, how do you see, you know, what's your relationship with this person? And when you describe that, you get all sorts of different things from appreciations and so forth, but also, you know, what is the focus of your work? Or there's opportunities for revealing difference as soon as people get beyond the check buttons. And even the check, you know, even radio buttons, you can see people's different, you know, focuses. That's what I was meaning by that.
Thank you.
There's even one other thing about normative, which is if you can detect clusters, then you can start to see how different clusters have some of the same similar values and or perspectives.
Thanks, Tim. Drew,
Drew,
you're on mute.
Yeah. Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm just trying to relate the framework that you've described here to the stuff that we divide work into very similar categories, although we haven't labeled them as truths. It seems to me that there's three ways of looking at the world. It's through statistics and through the data end of things, or it's through storytelling, because it's subjective stuff, and it's through the structures that you explore by network mapping. What we've tried to do with people is to collect data through storytelling as far as we can. But we don't use individual stories, we use group storytelling. People that will invent a character that comes from their community and tell you all sorts of stuff about that character. And that's, you will gain far more information there than if you interview any one person. So we use that a lot. And then we use games to allow people to explore the structure of the map afterwards. So it's providing them with a tool to be able, you know, to get beyond the initial viewing of the map into actually using the map by using games. So games, storytelling, and mapping are the three thrusts of what we do. But it kind of models the general framework you're talking about here. Am I rambling away here? I feel I'm rambling. I've got to return you to the.
Thank you, Drew. Christine, I'm going to give it to you to wrap us up.
Okay. Well, I'll just, Kara, are you ready and able to make announcements and willing and having the capacity today? Maybe.
Always in that hunting for the tabs thing. So just give me 1 second to get there. Okay, so our next SenseMaking session will be on July 1st. We have our upcoming on-ramp next week on June 10th. We are technically still looking for a map for that if somebody would like to volunteer themselves in last minute chances. And then on the third Monday of the month are our deep dives, so that will be June 17th. And then we will not be having our tech talk this month, but we will be having our tech talk at the end of July. And I can put links in the chat in just a moment.
Everybody's ready? 3, 2, 1. Have a wonderful day.
Good to see everybody.
Well,
Bye. Thank
Thank
you.
you for coming.
Good day.
Thank you, Amy
Bye.
Bye.
and Christine.